spawning in the bottom right in the blue. Just playing one Vanguard versus Vanguard and not quite having what he needed. His name is Mixu.
And in the top left, his opponent looking to rescue a little bit of his reputation back here in this third place match. It's MaNa.
And as we take a look at things, I think clearly the answer, actually, we're saying, oh, you know, Mixu, MaNa both. They don't seem to have quite the understanding of the new patch, at least in this matchup, that maybe some of the other players do. Although you did say MaNa was able to 3-2-man Gruesel, which is a pretty solid result. Importantly, it's because that Mixu clearly, he spent all this time playing 120 games of Cell OP before the eco patch, getting to #1 on ladder. And this is time he could have spent a grinding defensive Vanguard macro play and seeing how that was going to work out. So clearly, it's all the Celestials' fault. It's actually specifically Grinny's fault in chat.
We've evolved balance whining. It's all about like, why did this super fun broken faction distract me from playing the true faction, the good faction? It's top tier. I love it. Mwah, chef's kiss.
Ooh, look at this little bit of a citizen server. It's so good. And the repair-o-matic means that none of this. Oh wait, never mind. I was gonna say the repair-o-matic means nothing dies, and it looks like nothing will still die. But a nice use there of the sentry post. And actually, adding, yeah, that probably made more sense, right? Because you get about 23 damage, 22 damage off the sentry post. And now we're gonna have MaNa trying. You know he was watching the previous series between Mixu and Albino to see what's happening. So he's trying to do the same thing. It's just not working out nearly as well this time. It just really is not. Mixu is learning, he's evolving, he's growing, and another beautiful surround, and any of this Bob's not gonna go down. Yep, there we go, overcharge, keep things alive, and not only does it keep things alive, just overcharge, go take your third base. You've killed off a couple Lancers, you are, man, Mixu is flying. Oh, he's gonna get the dog too. And your little dog too. Mixu is flying in this game one.
Is Mixu the Wicked Witch of the East? He is in the eastern part of this map, so I don't know. Maybe the parallel works here. It's something worth considering. This is fun to see the sentry post as well, getting cleaned up, refunded. Excuse me, 100%. Still very, very good. But I don't think Mixu lost a single unit in that exchange. I don't think he lost a Lancer. I don't think he lost any of his Bobs. He did a great job pulling his workers off, using the repair-o-matic to keep everything stabilized. And now, where we saw in the previous series that Mixu was the beneficiary of distraction and not being able to play at his own pace, it feels like he's adapted a little bit here. He was able to deal with that harassment, but while also being able to maneuver himself out to his third base. He gets his third base situated a little bit faster. He's going to have another set of barracks and a biokinetic lab on top of that. And it's MaNa now that's kind of left going, okay, I have to clean up my own mess at this point. He does have hedgehogs though. This is a small deviation. Seems like it's going to be largely bio from Mixu at the onset here. As his central command is done, we might start seeing some veterancy being dropped down onto units. MaNa's got some energy to spend as well.
And remember, MaNa also, a bit of an inefficiency more than anything else. He overcharges his Bobs to go build the third base, but he pulls 2 Bobs and then he pulls 2 later on. So the 4 Bobs were not only was he slower to even get the third base started, the overcharge was not nearly as efficient as we are used to seeing. So MaNa now, third base is mining, but if you look at it, he's got 4 workers on the third. We're looking at 7. There's got a Therium. The Therium refinery is already done. Mixu, we're not seeing it in the supply just yet, but Mixu's development of his tech in this game is so much faster, so much more developed than where MaNa would like to be. So it's going to be this mass hedgehog. Okay, interesting. It's going to be double hog. Hog Exo is going to be the name of the game, which Exos are pretty good against hedgehogs. They do bonus damage versus heavy. Not that it really matters, but more importantly, they've A, been buffed in HP, B, they've been buffed in flat damage, not in bonus damage, and they don't take bonus damage from the hedgehogs. So that's pretty good. But even still, these 2 hedgehogs and MaNa, they're doing a pretty good job. They killed off a couple Bobs. They're going to get this Exo down, and well, they should be able to. Man, it's so hard to secure a surround, and the approach is going to keep things alive a little bit longer. It's like, man, all the Bobs pulled off the worker line to get 1 hog.
That's a huge pinch, though, because the two hedgehogs, those are a force to be dealt with. That is very difficult to dance with. But only one hedgehog, you can kind of play around with that and run your units, use a Bob overcharge to keep them alive. So I think that's actually critical damage. It's going to force MaNa back home, where he has to deal with harassment at his own third base right now. All of these workers getting forced off of the line. The hedgehog dealing some really nice damage, softening up that Lancer. One Vulcan does come in behind, and these units do need to be positioned in a slightly different fashion. I think with the second Vulcan here, that is going to be able to shove this back and away, but the Vulcan is going to leap forward. You're not going anywhere, he says to the first Lancer. It goes down, but it does come at a pretty high cost here, BeoMulf. He loses like 6-8 workers on that worker line.
He does, and really for the low cost of one hedgehog, one exo, maybe one Lancer, which these units, they do matter in the early game. They do matter quite a bit, but again, for the economic value that you're finding, Mixu is totally okay with this, especially with how good his economy has become. Although this rally is unfortunate. If he hadn't lost these units, he would be a lot happier, because his rally just kind of getting stuck. He was rallying across straight through the middle on this idea that he could do what he wanted to do, but now, okay, he's actually getting some damage done on the Vulcan. Again, bonus versus heavy can be pretty solid, but without any quick draw hustle, that's not done yet. They don't do a ton of damage, and at the end of the day, it looks like Mixu's just gonna go reconnoiter, bring his army together, take advantage, revel in the fact of how much damage he's been able to get done, get his upgrades right, get orbital energy optimizer, so you can promote your units that much more. Although this is a lot of Vulcans. It's 6 Vulcans versus 2 Rushy. That's a little scary.
Well, and this is kind of an interesting moment. Biokinetics Lab is not researching quick draw hustle. It was researching the medtech upgrade for Nanoswarm, and now it's just not researching anything at all. That didn't even get finished. So this is kind of a big moment here for MaNa. He's able to capitalize on the fact that the technology is not going to be at the same level. Oh no, the medtech adept training did finish. He's going to pick up the master training now, but again, that's still not exos, and you've got some of your army tied up in exos to help deal with this push here. This is a very scary moment. It feels like Mixu's just overwhelmingly abandoned this position. Finally, he's going to have reinforcements coming up here. One Vulcan does get caught out for MaNa. That's going to get picked off, but these exos are not going to have the maneuverability that they need to. But hold the phone. Has MaNa given himself a one-way ticket here? He has nowhere to run.
Oh, absolutely. He thought he had everything that he needed, and I think a decent amount of Bobs have gone down, but this is a full surround. Mixu playing around with the health camp as much as possible. He's got this evac to keep some of these Vulcans alive as they continue to rally in. And MaNa, yes, he continues to rally Vulcans forward, but it's a single Vulcan at a time. In the extra problem, the biggest problem in this game is, first of all, System Shock's just about done. More importantly, with this evac here, there is no way this Vulcan is ever going to escape. MaNa was kind of all in on this because of the damage he took earlier on, and he did kill some Bobs. I think that is pretty true. I think those Bobs on the right side, even though they were mass repairing, I think a lot of them did go down to that one random Vulcan. But look at the armies right now. Mixu's up 20 supply, and I mean, I think it might even be more than that in the army supply at this point. And he has this evac. He has this micro ability. Fighting into a 5 Vulcan concave is probably not what you want to do, but he's going to go try to reclaim the vision camp. This evac going for a drop on the left side, trying to find a little bit more there. And remember, Mixu, he's got a base on the north side as well, although this is a little dicey. I don't know. I don't like this one. This one does not. Oh, wait. Flank comes in from the left side. This was not harassed whatsoever. Tries to dash in, lines up these Vulcans, but he's lost so many of them already that I don't know. I don't think this was worth it.
I mean, it felt like it was a change of the master plan here for Mixu. He wanted to take those 2 Vulcan to go harass in the natural, but then when he saw how poorly the fight was going at the vision camp, he brought it back. Imagine if that had been part of the master plan to begin with, where he flanks with those Vulcan rather than trying to run around. That might have been a different fight, just making the spread of those Vulcan shots go in different directions. But hard to speculate here. All we can see, though, is that MaNa does have a nice position once again to move out. He is going to start claiming bases in the top right. This is going to start becoming a very interesting contention point here, as both players expanding towards the top right of this map. And eventually, I mean, Mix is going to want to try and check out. Yeah, here he is with the Vulcans in this evac. He scouts out the fact that the scrapyard is here. He might do some additional looking and go, if you've taken this double Therium patch, what else have you claimed up here? And that's exactly what he's going to go find. Well,
that's a problem. He's going to have to get a lot of damage done because there's a lot of Vulcans trying to take his third base down. And one Hornet is a thing. One Hornet, these units don't shoot up, but one Hornet does not out DPS this Nano Swarm. And this Vulcan is on move command. It's just dying. And also, we talk about Vulcans, we talk about their ability to go and get spun up. And when they're spun up, they do so much more damage. Fighting into this position, when the Vulcans are already spun up all the way, when they're starting to get promoted a little bit more, yeah, that's a little bit hard. Mixu, though, he's spending some time trying to get us around, get set up a little bit more, but MaNa's going to trigger it before it is ready. 3 Vulcans on the right side, even as they are mass repaired. We're seeing them slowly get taken down, and this army on the left side, not ready to go. So, MaNa, again, or I should say Mixu again, plays a very nice early game. I like how greedy he's been able to play. I like how he's been able to develop himself. But this mid to late game, it does seem like some of the other, like Albino, MaNa here, have a marginally better idea about how to play the late game. And it is very much showing through. MaNa, he's got his 4 bases. Mixu's lost his. He's lost the double Therium as well, which is a big problem in this mech setup. And yeah, we're going to see this attempted second scrapyard, but Vulcans, they're covering that one. So Mixu's economy is not where it needs to be. His army is not where it needs to be. And it looks like MaNa, despite the early game being a little awkward, is in a absolutely where he needs to be in this game number 3 or game number 1.
Yeah, I think it's all over but the crying at this point. The Vulcans should be able to clean this up. Even with a full surround in theory, this is not going to be the fight that Mixu needs. He gets some really good stuns on some of these units, but all it does is just buy him a little bit more time. Losing on the south side, now reinforcements are going to come in and support. MaNa has enough DPS here, I think. I mean, this medtech is able to deal a little bit more support here. 25 is available. I will be honest, I don't remember exactly how much. What? That is a huge bombing run here from the helicarrier of Mixu. Mixu's trying to rescue this back, but again, the supply doesn't lie here. It's 191 to 90. Yes, he can't shoot up at this helicarrier, but that's not going to stop these Vulcan from ravaging the natural. And game 1, it goes to the Polish Vanguard player.
So Lost Hope, cross spawn. In my previously, I would have said, Boneyard has given us one of the greatest maps that we've seen in kind of Stormgate's development. But as of Wednesday, Lost Hope I think has taken that crown. And granted, that was Infernal versus Vanguard Rushy, but Lost Hope tends to give us some pretty cool games because of just the focus on Therium in the middle of the map. It really does give players something they have to very much fight over.
Well, and I think it prompts an interesting conversation that is going to be contentious to some degree, because a lot of people feel very strongly about the creep camp and whether or not it has a purpose in Stormgate, what purpose it tries to serve, if it's actually making that purpose well known or meaningful. But I feel like in Lost Hope, we've seen what the potential of trying to contest for those camps in the center, forcing interactions rather than just separating out. And it seems like this map in particular has the most interaction capabilities. Now, is it a perfect map? No, it's not at all. But I think it does drive some interesting conversation as to what Frost Giant's vision is for including the creep camp, what purpose it serves in the early, mid, and late game, and how it can drive more exciting games. Because having control of that vision in the center, very, very impactful as this Lancer is kind of dancing with these units in Mixu's main base. It's MaNa on the offensive once again. But I'd be curious to see how things develop and what kind of maps we see going forward, if we're going to see more maps that have maybe just lesser amounts of creep camp, or if it's going to be more designed like Lost Hope here, where we still have a similar amount that draw enemies towards the middle and force those engagements.
Well, really what we're looking for is right now, one bomb. There we go. He's going to get the bomb down. But what we're really looking at is that we know that there's going to be a big creep camp pass at some point. That's going to make the creep camps be a little bit more active, do more interesting things than just kind of give a little bit money and give a passive buff, which is where we are right now. Because this is first iteration. This is just like, is it fun to fight over creep camps? Is kind of the idea. So you talk about map design. And I think one of the things we're going to say is we should have less camps. They should be more centralized. They should be more of a centralizing thing for people to play around rather than kind of how, say, Boneyard works, where it's all on the edges of the map and it forces players to play away from each other for the most part. But also, again, it's hard to tell because I think we're going to have camps that do things like give you some item that you have to hold on to, or some maybe unlock, I mean, more things like the siege camp, for example. So it's hard to tell, but what I will tell you is I am so excited for the eventuality. At some point, map makers are going to get their hands on the map editor, and at some point, we're going to learn what an actually good, like a really good Stormgate map is going to look like. Because I mean, look back at the Wings of Liberty maps we had, dude. You know, like it is so different. It turns out that having just a lot of people making maps makes maps a lot better than the developers, even if they spend a lot of time on it. It's just the economies of scale make a big difference.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the map editor coming out too. I think that's something that the community can genuinely get excited about as a whole. But we're talking about the future. Let's talk about the present here. This game is slowly unfolding here. It feels like MaNa is not getting quite the same amount of harassment that he did in the previous game. Mixu, once again, kind of developing a little bit more confident strategy, not getting the full surrounds that we saw in game number 1, but just mitigating the damage a little bit better, forcing down a little bit of SimCity to keep some of these units from just freely wandering in and out. But among all of that harassment, MaNa got a very early command center down on the low ground. So he's at his third base. It's largely just mining Therium right now. And we're starting to see these players kind of develop and get out onto the map. Mixu as well, taking his third base with these cross spawn locations. Man, we've been so fortunate with these cross spawns because it doesn't lead us into one crazy moment or another.
Dude, MaNa goes 3 base, 3 command post very early. And then he pulls like 7 bobs with this Vulcan for the early aggression. This is, I mean, I don't know that this is something that, I don't think this is something that Mixu would have scouted. But, I mean, going 3 base into bob pull is wild because that's a lot of money. I mean, it's for the Therium, I guess. But even still, I mean, this is kind of interesting. It's not like you would do in the old good old 2.5 base SDV pull in StarCraft 2 because you have mules to make up for the that's what the 3 command posts are for, or command centers are for. You don't have that. This is just going to be for the mass repair, and the question now is whether Mixu can defend against this. I mean, there's an overcharge, and there's a buzzsaw cannon on the high ground, so this is a pretty good situation to start in. Buzzsaw cannon to do bonus damage versus light, but even still, these bobs on the repair with the Vulcan level 2. They're just going down, and the turret's getting so very, very low.
It's so dangerously low. It's dropped into the single digits a number of times. It finally gets picked off, but it's going to come at the cost of the Vulcan getting a full surround, and then all of the Lancers just leave. They want to deal with the Hedgehog here. They decided that the Vulcan is not going anywhere. It's eventually going to be dealt with, and that will be the case. This is a huge investment from MaNa that did not pay off at all. He really didn't find that much damage. Yes, he did kill a decent amount of workers, but he lost the same workers in kind. So the only opportunity that MaNa could potentially even benefit from was the fact that he had 3 bases, realistically very quick, but he's not going to be able to make his army in any such way. But Mixu's coming out here. He just wants a scrapyard and a sentry post at the center. I feel like if Mixu were just to push, he would have enough here to win. But maybe he's going to back off and let MaNa get back into this game.
What I will say, though, is man, I don't know that I've seen this number of Lancers get made in this mirror matchup, in quite a while, but it was Mixu saying, these are the solutions. I will build these because it is what I need. They do not take bonus damage from the Vulcan, so they're not going to get shredded. They're going to be my beef line, and they're going to sit there, and they're going to eventually get this round, and that's going to work out. But yeah, you're right, Rushy. If Mixu does not win this game, we're going to have some serious questions because he is so far ahead. Yes, there was the quick third base. But again, MaNa was effectively mining off of 1 base Luminite for the entirety of that push. So his economy, not in a good situation. Even as the workers died, Mixu was mining off the third base. It was still 2 bases versus 1 as the bubble's going to go down, knock down some more of these hogs. And with a 30 supply lead and Mixu continuing to push, it's going to be a very difficult defense for MaNa.
Well, we need to look at the split push that's happening here. Mixu is broken into the back door of MaNa's base. He's sending workers out to go build a 4th base location, so he's going to be able to scout this, but he has to find a way to respond, and he's got to respond quickly. There's not a good way for MaNa to defend in both locations, so the Hedgehogs are going to dash on up here. They jump on top of that Vulcan and get that knocked down right quick, but is that going to be enough here? They've got to be able to dance with those Lancers that, if left alone, are going to just absolutely ravage the main Luminite line here, and that's exactly what they're going to try and do. But Mixu is already into the natural as well with a Vulcan and these Exos. One Atlas pops out to try and help out, but the Exos immediately spot it and say, hey, that target is mine, and pick it off almost instantly. These units are getting so low, BeoMulf, but the hold right now is kind of happening here for MaNa, but I worry that it's going to come at way too much cost. He's lost way too many workers in the natural, and the main has been ravaged as well. I don't think this is going to be worth it in the end for MaNa.
I'm going to be honest with you, though. I agree with you 100%. I think Mixu still wins this game. But throwing away half your army to pull the Hedgehogs in the main base for just a little bit longer, I don't know that was the right play. I think you just had enough stuff where you just kind of run straight up the gullet with your entire army and end the game. As it stands, this army, I think, is going to get taken down. I think that we are going to force Mixu's well, maybe not now because there's a lot here, but it does feel like MaNa can potentially beat this army down and force the game to last a little bit longer, which is, again, is that the goal? No, the goal is to win the game, but it gives yourself a little bit more room to survive, and it doesn't feel like MaNa should have even had that room to survive. We're going to see, I mean, yes, more of these mech bases are going to fall down, but look at the Hedgehogs annihilating this, evaporating this. I mean, medtechs are heavy too. They're not going to get healed up all that long. All the X's are going to fall, and MaNa technically holds on to his 3 bases. Again, his economy is bad, and he's lost a lot of workers, and the army supply is not there. But I can't help but imagine that if the entire army was there, I think maybe he's able to, maybe, I don't know. It feels like he would have been able to punch through a little bit better.
Yeah, it was a tough situation, and I think MaNa did the best that he could. But I love Mixu's decision making to try and to take out as many of the production structures as possible, because MaNa doesn't want to invest money in rebuilding these production facilities. He needs units. He needs more of these Hedgehogs. He needs to be able to split off a couple of these units and punish Mixu the same way that Mixu punished him. And instead, he's spending a lot of time out here at the center of the map. I mean, this is decent damage picking off these Exos one at a time, but all it does is it opens up these Hedgehogs to get jumped on top of, and that is going to be critical damage that he cannot recover from. And
we're going to move in to game 3. MaNa just continues to take this page out of Albino's book, the hand check, the skill check, where you got the barracks, and look at what he just immediately rallied into Mixu's naturals. Like, yep, I know what Mixu wants to do. Let's see if I can punish it. And some games it's been better, some games it's been worse. Sometimes it's got a lot of damage done, sometimes it's been kind of killed. But it does force Mixu. It doesn't let Mixu get away with just this very greedy command post first, very quick third command post that Mixu's been trying to play with for quite a while in this series, or really in every matchup since the new patch.
And it's gone both directions, right? We've seen examples of players being able to navigate this opening harassment and deal with the lack of units early on, but also we've seen how punishing it can be on the opposite side of it as well. So it's kind of nice. It truly is a skill check. It's not just like, it's not the same kind of response in Infernal versus Vanguard. Oh, you see the Infernal player go for a shrine first. Well, I'm just going to send a turret across the map and shut you down instantly and just try to win the game in the 3-minute mark. It really comes down to a little bit of a back and forth exchange. How well can you maneuver this moment? How well can you keep your economy spinning while also preventing me from shutting any of it down?
And what I really like as well, this is very defensible and easy to manage. It's not just kind of this, it still has the potential to be reasonably impactful. It's not kind of like the Reaper interaction, like Reaper versus in TVZ and StarCraft 2. It's like, I'm going to poke with the Reaper and nothing's going to die. But I kind of have to do it because it's a skill check, and, you know, sure, maybe I get a link or something. Killing off a Bob, yes, it's not as impactful as it would have been pre-patch because you start with more and you're able to get more and it scales a little bit better. But even still, you do force things. It is a more interesting, well, I don't know. I like that it has the potential to be impactful a little bit more than just kind of the Reaper versus Ling scenario you do have in StarCraft 2 for the most part. So for now, the Lancers are going to keep fighting. Bob's getting a little bit low. Do we have Overcharge off cooldown? I don't know. It's going to be off cooldown soon. But importantly, the mass repair on these Bobs for the most part is going to keep them alive. But it is mining time lost. That Mixu is not really able to, just keeping him honest.
Yeah, it's a good use of the time more than anything, because everything kind of spins up a little bit slowly in this particular matchup when we don't see Mech Bay instantly hit the ground. And it is going to be an additional barracks out for Mixu once again. So it's going to be double barracks, focusing on getting some more Lancers, more than likely getting into some Exo and a Medtech as well. MaNa's going to be the first to leap out to a third base here, sending the 3 units forward. And MaNa finally able to shake these Lancers of Mixu. They get lost in the brush. They couldn't see the forest through the trees there, BeoMulf.
In the Tarverse, the Pokemon trainer would like to challenge you to a duel or something. I don't know. I was never allowed. You know, it's funny. I was never allowed to have any sort of console, and this includes handhelds growing up. I eventually bought myself a little laptop, so I never really got super into the Pokemon thing. So I will and it really makes Zombie Grub very, very frustrated when I cast with her, because she's like, yes, this classic reference. And I feel like Captain America after 50 years of thaw, where I'm like, I think I understood that reference. I don't know. Maybe.
It's super effective. You can just hit her with that one.
There we go. The reference was super effective. Beo was not.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so we have, I mean, I think both players have kind of settled into a routine here. Mixu's grabbed his health camp and is going to go try and put on a little bit of pressure here. MaNa is grabbing his health camp as well. I think Mixu is probably going to try and intercept a little bit of the reinforcement here, but this is kind of an awkward moment for MaNa. He just clears this health camp, and his units are going to be stuck with this radioactive blood for about 30 seconds. It reduces armor, which is not wildly crazy, but when you think about a mirror engagement where you've got units that are fighting each other that should deal the same damage and have the same amount of health and armor, and now suddenly your units aren't nearly as strong, that's going to give you a severe disadvantage for a decent amount of time. So MaNa not able to run right back. It allows Mixu to grab that speed camp and dive right into this third base location without a whole lot of repercussions. And not to mention, MaNa's now way down on the supply.
That, for supply, but even still, it's a problem. Now, Vulcans are out on the field now. So this is theoretically your opportunity. Yes, Lancers are not light units, but they also don't do bonus damage to the Vulcan. So the Vulcan is going to be this tanky solution that allows you to, theoretically eventually make sure that this is okay. But in the meantime, you're right. This is annoying. This is a problem. In fact, promotions are going to get spent on some of these Lancers just to make sure that they're able to run forward. And remember, promotion is not just a thing that makes them do a little bit more damage and have a little bit more HP. It makes them move a little bit faster. It means that they can chase some of these Lancers down, or importantly, block the position in, so this damage from the Vulcans can continue to happen. He can continue to slowly whittle these Lancers down, make sure he has the third base back up, and MaNa not too upset with how this has gone. Yeah, the mining time is unfortunate, but he's killed off a lot of these Lancers, and it means that the follow-up, this Hedgehog, well, they're still Hedgehogs. They're still pretty scary, but the mobility and the dash is not going to make contact, so they're going to have to back up for now. But yeah, this pressure, while somewhat effective, is pretty well handled.
It's triple Mech Bay behind this as well. So triple Vulcan production already for MaNa. I mean, it's going to be, let's see, we got 1, 2. I mean, it's only 2 at this point. He's building more barracks at this current conjecture. So trying to get more of these medtech out, I don't think that's terrible, but I think Mixu needs to read the situation. He needs to see that there are 3 of these Vulcan moving across the map, a 4th one being reinforced as well. Bob's coming across to provide a little bit of additional support. Those are actually going to get caught out by the Hedgehogs, so that will be some decent damage that needs to be done. But Mixu doesn't have anything on the opposite side of the map right now. He has a couple of these units, but that's not going to stand up against 4 Vulcan right now with a little bit of Lancer support. support, they're just going to rip through the natural and start pounding down those production structures.
And importantly as well, while the Bobs are they're caught out, they are mass repairing. They're not really dying, and the single hedgehog is actually, all the hedgehogs are going to get taken down as well. So that, yes, cutting down the reinforcement line is nice. The dash forward does a pretty good job stunning the first Vulcan, but, well, one Vulcan gets stunned as well. The bubble has been committed. This Vulcan's not dying for a long time. And yeah, the overcharge, actually, I'm not going to say the overcharge. The overcharge is keeping these units alive, these Bobs alive for so very long, to the point where for a second it was looking like it might be a hold for Mixu, but now the Vulcans continue to arrive even more. This one last Vulcan barely stays alive. More Bob's gonna get pulled into the fight, but they don't have the benefit of overcharge anymore, and they're gonna get taken down. And economic disadvantage is starting to really compound, even as these Vulcans, they are gonna start to fall. It looks like Mixu is gonna be able to force MaNa out of this position, but we got to take stock of where the damage is. Economy, a lot of Bobs have gone down. Only 4 workers, I guess 6 now in the natural. Not a lot of mining in the third base. Has to get pulled right back over. Eventually he's going to be able to resaturate. And the Vulcans are still here. They are still down to clown. I mean, a lot of Exos in the back line, especially as these Vulcans are stunned. They do pretty good damage, but even still, they get a little bit too close and they get shredded. So Exos can be pretty good, Rushy, but you gotta have something to tank for them, and just not enough Vulcans for that right now.
Oh, it's the tanking and the positioning. You can't just stand your Exos right behind your Vulcan. They're going to take a lot of splash fire because these Vulcans fire in a straight line, and the Bobs are going to get peeled out. I mean, that's to be expected. They're there to try and help support and keep that Vulcan alive as long as possible. But if you're losing free bio units just because they're standing there, is not where you want to be for Mixu. Now, ultimately, he does push this back in a way. It did come at a pretty stiff cost. He lost a lot of workers. His ability to shove back across the map and punish his opponent, not really present right now. He's going to just instead try to claim a couple of these camps, grabbing a Luminite tower in the center of the map. MaNa actually has 3 workers just kind of chilling on the lower right-hand side. I'm sure MaNa's not even thinking about that at this point, but hopefully at some point he recognizes that those are in fact there, because there are reinforcements that would benefit from the participation of those units. But instead, it is just going to be fighting over the camps in the center. Both players are kind of licking their wounds a little bit, but I think MaNa is a little bit better off here in positioning. He has a scrapyard out towards the center to try and get more of his Ethereum, but he will not back down his pressure.
Now, here's the problem, though. MaNa very heavily supply blocked for quite a while. It's giving Mixu room to get some of that supply block to kind of claw his army back to where it needs to be, although this is unfortunate. On the north side, Mixu trying to go and get the double Therium base, but it gets found out before the refinery even goes down. So the Bobs have to run away from that one, and that is something MaNa very much benefits from. He's got his scrapyard on the bottoms, or on the north side. He's able to make that happen. But look at this. Okay, no, those are just Bobs on the left side, so not really gonna be a surround, and certainly that radioactive blood makes it a little bit harder to take the fight. Exos, by the way, no quick draw, so they don't have that big DPS boost that can be so impactful. But this position from Mixu is not a bad one. He's going to be able to dash in heavy stuns on a lot of these Vulcans, snipes one down. And if you can hold this high ground, make sure the Exos are separate against from where the Vulcans are, you can start to knock these things down. And Hedgehogs, again, they're solid versus the Vulcans. Vulcans also pretty good against the Hedgehogs, and they don't do a lot to the Exos. So if you can take these Vulcans down, maybe there's going to be an opportunity. But man, there are so many hogs. There are so many Hedgehogs that the kiting is going to commence. And man, again, seeing Exos get kited by something for once, oh, it feels so good, Rushy.
The maneuverability is the name of the game here for MaNa. He's going to be able to pick off so many of these Vulcans, and he dives in, he grabs them, and then he just pushes back out here. And that time that he retreats benefits him. These Hedgehogs can store up to 4 missiles at a time. So they do have a static amount of damage that they can deal per second. But if you wait and you let those Hedgehogs build up their missile count, you can just pummel your opponent with extra DPS for a brief amount of time. And that's exactly what he's trying to do here. He's going to be able to jump on top of the Vulcan. It leaps forward, but it leaps forward to its death and gets picked away. And now suddenly this front line is completely gone. Yes, these Exos are going to be able to dance with the Hedgehog, but they will never be able to outrun the Hedgehog as the chase has begun and these units slowly get picked away. MaNa is 162 to 114. He's able to shove back into this pocket between the natural and the third base location, and one flat cannon is all that remains to try and hold this position back.
Yeah, well, let's interpose a couple Exos, but again, the big problem is, by the way, I love this. MaNa, he's gone and taken the bottom right base, and he's just put a sentry post there. He's like, I will slowly kill your scrapyard. It's going to be fine. But again, the problem is Quick Draw Hustle not ready until right now, so no real way to get a good rejoinder on all these hogs. And MaNa seems to have figured this matchup pretty well. You talked about that 3-2 versus Mangarussel. Well, we can see exactly why. He knows how this thing goes, and that puts him up 2-1 on series point against Mixu. So Rushy, it's game 4. Do we see the same thing again? Mixu command post first. MaNa. Yeah, okay, we do.
Yeah.
MaNa, yeah, okay. We know how this works.
I was going to say, I'll just stop you right there. Cut you at the pass. Yes, absolutely. I would be surprised to see major deviations in the opening. That feels more like a rhythm thing than anything else. It's like, okay, even if it's not the most efficient or the most optimal build path, I feel comfortable with it. I understand the timings, and I'd rather play a suboptimal build more efficiently than try to play the most efficient build suboptimally, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? A mediocre plan is better than a good plan never implemented. You know, it's like
so true.
It's like you can spend so much time trying to be perfect, and in the meantime, someone is getting good enough and practicing that good enough to be better than your, poorly, not as well understood perfection. I'll agree with you there.
The rare agreement. Let's go.
I disagree with that. We always agree, Rushy.
We agree to disagree,
or we disagree to agree.
Oh, okay. Now my brain hurts a little bit. I like the Repair-O-Matic coming down here for Mixu. This feels like you mentioned it in a previous series. It's the ego check, and I think it's the right call to make. You know that MaNa's going to come in here and try and harass once again. Ooh, getting that scout would be really, really nice. Nope, MaNa's going to separate that really quick. I think Mixu had the DPS there. He could have dealt with that a little bit quicker. Oh. However, this main base is kind of being let run rampant right now with MaNa's forces. There isn't a sentry post up top. I'd love to see that brought in. I mean, reinforcements really aren't the concern at this point because MaNa has set up his own base on the opposite side of the map, but it's just a big game of ring around the Luminite mine at this point.
As I keep looking at these, I'm like, man, Bob's getting so low. It's one more swipe, and then the repair keeps him alive. I'm like, man, I get baited so hard by these engagements early. And there we go. That's a nice little bit of citizen's arrest. The Lancers, again, Lancers don't do damage to Lancers. It's 10 damage, really closer to 7 because of the armor, at 7 or 8, something like that. You have a 260 armor, or 260 HP at base. You don't do damage. It's not a thing. But even still, you can't just kind of sit there, and you got to ring around, and eventually these Lancers are going to get taken down. I don't think a single Bob died this time. So while some mining time was lost, probably the best defense we've seen from Mixu in this series thus far.
Yeah, I was really trying to keep an eye on that count, and I think you are correct. I don't think he lost any. If he lost any, he lost 1. And that's still a pretty decent defense, all things considered, as it's going to catapult Mixu into his third base location as well. Somebody pointed out, I think this is kind of neat. I love the 3D printer effect of building these bases. It's kind of cool to see that structure put together. And that's one of the graphical pieces that I hope that Frost Giant continues to develop on, because I do think it's kind of neat. Very cool to watch.
It kind of makes sense in this near future, within say the next couple hundred years, near future, not 1,000 years in the future, and we can just teleport things down. No, it's like, it makes sense that if we're trying to rapidly set up field stations, field headquarters, we're going to set up some gantries and pipe the concrete and build a building in 24 hours. Or, obviously it's a little bit more advanced now, and sure, fine. But that is a plausible advancement of human technology based on where we are right now. It makes sense. And it's kind of cool, little futuristic. Clearly it's a evolution of the Sigma stuff. And actually, what are we at actually? It's 2100 something, I think, is if you look at the timestamps from the most recent lore book. So it's really only like maximum 200 years 200-ish year, like 150 years away from where we are right now. So makes sense.
Yeah. Command post is morphing into a central command a little bit later for Mixu than it did for MaNa. So that tech timing could be substantial. I don't think it's going to have a major implication because right now it is just going to be Vulcan tech out for MaNa. He doesn't have anything else brewing behind it. We don't have a machine lab that's going to provide additional potential for tech upgrades. So ideally, maybe the biggest difference is that we're going to see some top bar abilities that have different timings, but look at the amount of energy that MaNa has right now. He's at 78. What is he saving it for?
Probably for a big push, right? You go and you bring in your hedgehogs in this case, you bring in your Vulcans, and you just pound that promote key, get your Vulcan up to level 2, level 3. But you don't want to do it beforehand, because if you need to save something with a bubble or a promote or something like that, there is, unlike spending your money, right? You always want to keep your money low. Very rarely do you want to go and bank money up, because that means that you're not developing your economy as quickly, you're not developing your army, you're wasting production time. There really is no downside to saving your money or to saving your energy. It is a resource that you can spend at any given time. It's not like there are cooldowns you got to work against. So it allows MaNa here to figure out what exactly it is that he wants to do. Does he need a bubble? Does he need a promote? Does he need to drop a sensor drone for some unknown reason that I'm not really expecting? But I like the position he's firing in. It's away from the buzzsaw cannon. A buzzsaw cannon can be pretty good in this scenario, but it's just a little bit too far away. It's out of range. And this Vulcan, we talked about that energy. This Vulcan, there we go. It's going to get promoted up. Some of the energy is going to get spent keeping it alive. And now, well, yeah, that buzzsaw turret's down. Flat cannon, though. 4 more range than these Vulcans. It's going to be consistent damage. It's going to at least force MaNa to not fight into the Luminite income quite the other way he might otherwise be interested in doing.
Dude, picking off this mech bait would be huge damage for MaNa. Mixu needs that structure. He's only got 2 right now, and now he's down to 1. So that means it's 1 Vulcan production for the Finnish Vanguard player here. I just hope he's not finished at this point. He is running out of steam. He's going to have to pull the workers off here to try and deal a little bit of additional damage. 1 Vulcan to rule them all, but it gets tapped down. You're not running away. That is going to be very, very critical damage. If he loses his 3rd base, I don't see a scenario where MaNa won't be able to just run all over his opponent.
I would, however, love to see the Vulcans get slightly closer to this 3rd base so they can, do damage to the Bobs on the other side. As it stands, Bobs are going to get pulled in a straight line into this, and even if they are overcharged, they are falling down. And this, by the way, is with MaNa. He had a what am I saying? There we go, Vulcan, not a vulture. Kind of stuck on rally, just sitting there for a time being, not taking the fight even as it stands. Dashes forward, more Bobs are going to get pulled, but because Bobs are light units and these Vulcans are very heavily spun up, the Bobs pull in, they die immediately. Nice timing out of MaNa, and he is going to win this series 3-1. Maybe a little cold to start of the day, but he has warmed up in the extreme. He's got this one figured out.